Hi guys, my name's Seb Tudor, I'm the man on the Silver Mountain, and welcome back. Today, following on from my video on gender that I did the other day, I want to talk about the masculinity and femininity of things, and we'll kick off with masculinity because why not? So masculinity as a defined thing is the list of traits and so on associated with being masculine, with being male. And obviously, to one extent or another, this can be quite a subjective list. But things that are touched on a lot of the time are things like courage, independence, assertiveness. At times it very much relates to power, as in control and power over a situation. As well as also to an extent ignoring consequences or being willing to take risks. And there are, within the same kind of areas of discussion as the gender stuff that we were talking about before, there is an awful lot of often negativity towards masculinity in one way or another. And as a result, I figured that would be I mean, there's a lot to talk about, but that would be one of the areas that we spend a lot of time on in our discussion today. But firstly, I want to take this back, as I've done with a fair few of these things, back to looking at this from a more evolutionary perspective. And as a result, taking men in our what we're essentially designed for, what we've evolved to be and adapted into, what was our role? Well, our role within, say, a caveman-esque tribal community was to go out, hunt, bring back the food in regards to meat, animals slain, and materials in regards to going out further afield to cut down wood, to bring back other various resources that required a lot of manual labour to do so. And as a result, being willing to take risks, being independent, being assertive over the situation you're in, things like that, they are important key traits and skills and behaviours that are very much necessary for those jobs. You are not going to be able to, for example, go head to head with a mammoth amongst a collective of others to try and bring it down, unless you are willing to take risks, unless you are willing to stand confidently against it, and unless you're willing in one way or another to be aggressive. And as a result, those things have become very much part of our biology, of the things that men are designed to do to one extent or another. And as a result, yes, in the modern world, some of those things just don't have as much of a place. For example, the aggression and the focus and the drive and the risk taking now have less of a place, because it often just leads to reckless behaviour that causes damage, both to yourselves or to others or whatever. And as a result, yes, there are some things that need to be taken into account relative to times have changed from back then, but it also leads us to an interesting impasse in regards to men, because the world has become much, much safer. The world has become a place where hunters and warriors aren't as necessary. And as a result of that, the people who would be predisposed to those positions, just through to their biology, through to the way that the world makes sense to them in their own head, those individuals, they're not going to have as happy a time, because they don't fit as well as they used to in a more in a less safe society where things were harder. And as a result, moving on from that, yes, there have been changes. For example, you do have an awful lot now in the world in regards to ensuring that people are safe. And as a result, yes, there is still crime, yes, there are still threats, but they affect a much, much smaller number of people than, for example, an entire tribe, potentially 20 to 50 people, being wiped out in one evening just because they pissed off the wrong set of animals, or because another tribe was passing through and they felt like it was a good idea to eliminate competition as they did. Those kind of issues still prominent in certain very small places on the planet, but for the most part, especially within the Western world, or areas that are more developed, you do not have those issues anymore unless you actively put yourself into dangerous situations. If you are going to go out into the Australian outback and attempt to wrestle crocodiles, for example, if you go out into the wildernesses of North America and Canada and decide to try and arm wrestle grizzly bears, you aren't going to have a particularly safe or happy time of that, I can imagine. However, yeah, that's where things like courage and so on have all been attributed to men, and why they, in a lot of instances, are far more obvious in men to one extent or another, which is why it's so easy to identify the masculine aspect in people. And the thing is, then though, people will bring up, for example, effeminate individuals or more retiring and gentle individuals who it's like, oh, well, these people fly in the face of all that. They're men and they don't need to be this way. And it's like, yes, but then again, there's always a social structure. Because realise that men are very much, again, focused on being a pack, a hunting pack. That's why they get so invested in sport. They associate themselves with part of the pack that is doing the thing, gaining the goal, and as a result, when someone says that their team is shit, or that they've not done a very good job, or when they lose a match, those people will try and defend their pack mates. They associate with it to such an extent that then they will lunge for it. And as a result, that happens to all men. There will be things that they invest in that they look to protect and so on. And in regards to those that are more effeminate, there's still that social structure. You aren't going to, for example, you cannot have several leaders of a pack attempting to do one thing, because that leads to conflicting instructions. It leads to lack of organisation. It leads to infighting, which gets them nowhere. There is still going to be that hierarchy where one or two or just a small number take the lead, and then the rest will follow, and then there's always going to be those individuals who stay further back and attempt to cover the others, make sure that things are working out well. Not all men can, or not all of anyone, in fact, in any situation, can all be in charge and yet still be able to deal with things on the same level. There has to be one person or a small number of people with the perspective and the capacity to call the shots on behalf of the others to make things work. That is why our government, why many world governments, especially the ones that are most effective, have a very small number of people relative to the entire population at the top, gaining information, gaining perspective on various things, and then in theory creating plans and making the best decisions for that state as a whole. Now, there are other issues involved in that particular example, which we won't go into here because they don't relate to masculinity specifically, but that's, there is very little difference between the traits in a for example, gay man versus a straight man. The biggest difference is purely where those traits focus. For example, if you've got a very stereotypically camp, gay, effeminate man, as per the media would portray, then there is a good chance that their defensiveness, their pack, their association that they focus on so strongly would be something more like a musician or someone that is a designer, an artist, something that isn't as aggressive, so it feels better for them to be involved with, but they will still defend it with fervour. They will still associate with it in such a way to put themselves out as a shield, or act on behalf of that individual. Then, in regards to a straight man, as said, you've got things like sports teams and so on and so forth. And the thing is, some of these behaviours you can see across the board. It's just the way that they act on those behaviours. So the association thing, you always have people growing into fandoms and things like that, and they will cross genders, they will cross sexualities and whatever else. But the thing is, you will see a much more aggressive and fervent pursuit in men a lot of the time than with women, and they will pick up an awful lot of that. The women will pick up an awful lot of that information, and they will discuss it, they will share it, they will socialise with it. Men will do things like hoard it. They will develop plans around it. You know, the number of theorists for various franchises tend to be far more masculine than they do feminine, purely because that allows them to pull things apart, open things up, find out how it works, put it back together again, and it's all very mechanical, and it's the way that the male brain is more inclined to work. Now, there's a thing that came out of Japan, which again stands to kind of go, oh well, these men, you've got that form of masculinity, and then, you know, that doesn't matter, we've got these people, and that's the herbivore men, whereby they are characterized by having a gentle nature, by not being bound by manliness, whatever that means, not being aggressive when it comes to romance, viewing women as equal, and hating emotional pain. Okay, let's break this down. All people hate emotional pain. That's no two ways about it. You can view, in regards to viewing women as equals, I view them as equals. However, there is never going to be 100% parity. That just is not going to exist, purely because, and I'm not talking about money, I'm not talking about jobs or anything like that, because that's already in law. Equality of opportunity and equality of wages on the same contract is already a legal issue that's been resolved. It was resolved in the 70s. And as a result, though, viewing women as equals, do I view all of the people around me as equal in so much as they are human, they are weak, they are frail, they are fallible? Yes. Does that mean that I am fallible and weak and frail in all the same ways that another man across the table from me, or another woman across the table from me, is going to be? No. And as that is the case, you cannot have 100% equality in all things. It's a nonsense. What you can have is the equality of opportunity, equality in regards to appreciation of each other and things like that. And that's just called being polite. It's just called obeying the law. It's not anything extreme. It's not anything that's bizarre. And so this viewing women as equals thing, again, sounds like a nonsense to me. Not aggressive when it comes to romance. Do you know what? Guys are terrified of romance. The number of people that I talk to on a regular basis who will, and myself included when I was younger, who are in no way prepared mentally for or emotionally for romance, because there is so much pressure put on us to pursue that in various ways, and yet it's daunting to an awful lot of people, regardless of how confident they seem, regardless of how adept they appear to be, or regardless of what they are capable of in other areas. It is not something that is easy for people on either side of the spectrum. But we are a species that at the moment especially has developed to the extent that it is a man that needs to prove themselves to a woman for a romantic relationship to start. She gets the veto on yes or no. It is very, very, very rare when you have the woman chasing a man and expecting the man to be the one to say yes or no. That's a very, very rare situation. I've only come across it a couple of times. It does exist, but at the same time, a lot of the things that come out of those conversations with women tend to be, how can I get him to do this, not what can I do to achieve this relationship. Differences in opinion, differences in the way that our bodies work, the way that our minds perceive problems, and also, yes, there is a social element to it from peer pressure and things like that, but that peer pressure comes from a space where we're developing. You hit puberty, all these feelings happen, you're in no way prepared for it, and as a result, that's when other people will become interested in it, that's when you'll become interested in it, and then the adaptations and acclimatizations required to become comfortable with that do take time. But also, there are so few good role models out there at the moment for both males or for men or women that it just becomes a nonsense. So the not aggressive when it comes to romance thing for these people, that sounds that doesn't ring true, because it's not just these men that aren't aggressive, because all guys, when they actually care, get nervous. All guys, when they're in that kind of situation, will walk around on eggshells for as long as they can. Sometimes I've been with my girlfriend for coming on 3 years now, and I still get moments where the nerves set in, where I'm uncertain, where all the rest of it, and that happens. That's going to happen, and in theory, it's a good thing that it does happen, because it means that you still care. It's fine. But the not aggressive when it comes to romance thing and so on, that's guys having to go into a social area where women are entirely in control. And it's not a case of the fact that it's women that are in control, it's a case of the fact that someone else is in control, and that's scary. It's scary for anybody. Not being bound by manliness. Manliness is if you're saying masculinity, then I would imagine that they're still displaying a lot of the various traits. If you're saying that they are literally cowardly, dependent, and so on and so forth, then that's a kind of as much of a case of them drawing themselves out of the potential gene pool and putting themselves into a different place, whether that's because that's what their biology has told them to do to one extent or another, or whether or not that's just them not being bothered or finding a different space to move into, where it's just easier not to do anything than to actually act. Then that's entirely up to them. But then here's the thing that really annoys me: having a gentle nature. And you can have a gentle nature while still being aggressive, assertive, independent, driven, confident, whatever. You can still have a gentle nature. Being gentle and taking care of things is not completely removed from being aggressive. You can be aggressive in regards to the pursuit of the things that you want, in regards to the way that you speak, in regards to how you give someone a handshake. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't hurt a fly. You can be the gentlest, most animal-loving, fluff-covered individual who wraps everybody in bubble wrap and makes sure that everybody is okay. And yet you could still yell obscenities at the TV screen when your sports team is losing. There's not, they're not completely removed from each other. They're not mutually exclusive. In which case, I feel that again is a nonsense. And now there's the one last thing that I want to move on to here is some of the real negativity that has come out and been thrown against men. More often than not, and especially more recently, and that's the whole things like masculinity so fragile and shit like that. that makes no sense, because a lot of the people who are discussing these things have no experience of being male, because a lot of the criticism comes from women anyway. And then on top of that, the subject of masculinity itself is, the traits involved can be applied to anything. You can't limit those traits. You can be courageous in regards to standing in front of a lot of people and giving a speech. You can be courageous in regards to signing up and going to war. You can be courageous in running into a burning building and saving a small dog. You can be courageous in regards to doing anything. Anything that would scare you, anything that would be hard. If you can step up, if you can push yourself forward to do it, then well done, firstly. And secondly, that's a trait that is more associated with men, and one of the reasons for it is because courage is a form of risk-taking. It's having enough of a belief in yourself, or enough evidence, or enough of a compulsion to do a thing that you work over all of your internal negativity and you move forward with it. And as a result, those traits, the masculinity, so fragile stuff, all the stuff that they're criticizing can be expanded upon to cover many things that most men will do, regardless of sex or regardless of what they're interested in or whatever else. And as a result, it's like, if they're suggesting that the certain modern perceptions of masculinity are inaccurate, then fair enough. But I feel that seems to be a different conversation than just purely insulting someone's the traits that go along with someone's gender. Because the thing that always stood out to me was that these individuals seem to be so for trans rights and things like that, and yet if you're insulting masculinity, aren't you also insulting all the women that then that then had the minds that found that they wanted to be male and then transitioned? Aren't you also insulting those people if they have become a hench bodybuilder-esque looking individual who goes and embodies everything that you've hated about masculinity so far? There's a lot that doesn't add up there. You can't be for one set of rights and things like that, and then put the proviso on it that it's only if they agree with you, only if they turn into the kind of person that you think they should turn into. If someone's got the right to do something, they've got the right to do something. You can't then come back on it. And the other thing that confuses me about those arguments is that when you do have men supporting those arguments, surely the fact that you're supporting those arguments is just you demonstrating that you don't have the capacity for those traits, that you don't necessarily have the capacity to stand alongside what you are and take the criticism for it. If someone comes up to me and tells me that I'm a fragile man and whatever else, then chances are I'm going to laugh at them because they're talking nonsense. If someone comes up to me and starts throwing insults at me because I'm a man, then I might argue my point, but the thing is, they're obviously insane. And as a result, something that I'm sure I'll make a video on in the future, there's no point in medicating corpses. If they're already gone, if they're already dead to the world, and they are ignoring everything in regards to evidence, in regards to what people are saying, in regards to whatever else, and they're stuck in their little space, in their little coffin, then there's no point in attempting to apply medicine after it. They're already gone. Just let them go. But yeah, so in closing, masculinity is a set of very elastic traits that most men will demonstrate purely because that's the way that their brains work. That is the way that the processes go through from one part of their brain to another to allow them to make sense of the world and to act. There's no two ways about that. It's not something to be criticised or ridiculed or broken down. Tempered, maybe, because as said, sometimes some of the risk-taking and kind of assertive behaviours can get people into trouble, can cause problems. But tempering it is not the same thing as removing it, destroying it, ridiculing it, locking it away, or any of those such things, you know. And the biggest cure to the issues is not removal of it or suppression of it or anything like that. It's conversation. It's learning. Learn to understand each other. Learn to understand how your brains work, how your bodies work, how other people's brains and bodies work. Take on that information, have the discussion, promote some understanding instead of just attacking and attacking for the sake of attacking. And things will be better. So anyway, tell me what you guys think. Are men incredibly fragile? Is masculinity one of these things that needs to be abolished, or is it something that needs to be promoted and developed in young men to help them feel healthier in the world and feel happier in the world, so that maybe we can lower that male suicide rate that is so high at the moment? Tell me what you guys think. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Please like if you found this informative or you liked what I was saying, and subscribe for more. Take care, guys.